Good morning, everyone. And first, thanks, Harleen and Anuka, for inviting me to speak on behalf of the Regional Council to present this experience we have learned from the first co-approved project. And I feel quite honored because in Chinese there's a saying that one bird, two stones. And today you got lucky because there's one stone, three birds. Because the council has been quite efficient in ways that we have participated in 3 INTERREG Europe projects for the first call, and 3 of them are all approved. So today I will shortly go through what are those 3 projects and what we have learned, and I have learned from those projects in the preparation. Before I started, may I kindly ask how many of you have been involved in the 4C programs? Could you raise your hand? Thank you. And then how many of you have been involved in the first call for the INTERREG Europe program? And how many of you are planning to apply for the second call? All right. Oh, all right. So I do hope that my experience might shed some light and help you along the way. Something shortly about myself. So I work for the Uudenmaan Regional Council and belongs to the unit of the EU services. So previously my main task has been helping the regions in preparing the EU project, specifically on the INTERREG Europe, INTERREG programs, Central Baltic Sea, as well as INTERREG Europe. And now, in the last 1.5 years, I have been very busy preparing pretty much 3 INTERREG Europe projects at one time, and now we have been approved with this IER project on improving the SME competitiveness, and I'll be the coordinator for the project. Actually, officially starting from yesterday, because we are officially approved and fulfill all the conditions yesterday. So, to be surely, just to clarify, we are not really a project institution, Uudenmaan Regional Council, but we do know and understand that the competitions for the INTERREG C or INTERREG Europe nowadays is really competitive. And when we were at that time preparing for projects, we have been running this IER, which is that I have been involved as the writer and preparing for almost a year. We have also been invited by the Bridges coordinator, which is the Gaino Etu, who is the lead partner, and invite us to be in the project, as well as the Passage, which is the continuations of our European Strait Initiative, which Council has been very active. So we thought that, okay, if the success rate is about 20%, probably 3 of them we will give 1. And we were quite lucky in terms of that. Apparently we've been really selective with the projects we are kind of involved, and 3 of them has been approved from the first call. So today I will shortly go through what are those 3 projects and what I have learned from them, and some as well, so some advices that I would like to share with you. So for the IER project, it's actually improving 11 structure funds, meaning ERDF, European Regional Development Funds, and European Social Fund in 10 countries, 10 regions. And this is a project that is based on the European Entrepreneurial Network, which Helsinki Uudenmaan region was nominated in 2012 and label award by the Commission, and then the European Committee of Regions in 2012. And that has been some sort of informal network which we have been quite active in participating and learning from other regions how to develop better entrepreneurship policy for the region. And we have taken the initiative to kind of try to develop cooperation in between these regions. The project is 2 + 2 years, means like 2 years of intervention learning process, 2 years for monitoring. We have been work a lot with the Committee of Regions in the preparation since 2004 to initiate this dialogue that we would like to start this project. And you can see that we have a quite wide geographic location spread out from the whole Europe. And then for the second project is the passage. That is what Verena was also mentioned, that is a quite ambitious project that is actually tackling 5 interregional cross-border cooperation programs in these marine borders regions. And then we have, just check now, we have 5, there are 10 partners in 8 countries, and they are all kind of like pairs of regions working together. For example, in the Gulf of Finland, we are Helsinki-Uudenmaan Regional Council is working together with Harjo County government in trying to bring up this low carbon economy policy considerations better into these cross-border cooperation programs. And I think this is, of course, yes, all the INTERREG Europe programs should be, and the partners should be public authorities who are responsible for the policy instruments. But of course, not in these 10 regions and partners. Only very few of us are actually managing authorities of these cross-border programs. So if you could elaborate this well enough, you do have a chance to get financed by the INTERREG Europe program. The third project is Bridges, which is led by Gainu Etu. I'm not so sure if Nineta is here today. She's the main writer of the application. And this is actually addressing 6 RIS3 strategies in the 6 regions. It's about filling the gap of the research and the real innovation and business development. Well, this is pretty much what I could say on the Bridges project in short. So just before this, Verena was talking about there are a couple of different kind of assistance that the INTERREG Europe could provide for you. And I think if you already have project idea in mind, and because of the INTERREG Europe program itself is very specific on improving the public policy, especially on a structure fund, it would be worthwhile to really check these questions actually listed on the INTERREG Europe programs and check how eligible you are to this program. This program is really a right fit for you. So you don't, it's a lot of work, I understand, to prepare projects. So do not waste your time if in the end you find out that there's a lot of fitting to do for you and you may not even be sure that you will get financed by a project, by the program. So changing from the mindset, I really have to say that for application writers, you really need to have mindset changing from the previous 4C program to the INTERREG Europe program. Because many of us are developing project idea on the very basic principles of project cycle management as well as logic framework. And whether you are conscious or not consciously, when you are writing the application form, you have to do all these calculative planning in order to fulfill all the questions and requirements from the program, operation program. However, since I have been involved in 3 application writing and 1 writing myself, I realized somehow this has been really, these 2 very basic principles has been especially important for the INTERREG Europe program. When you look into the application form later on yourself, you really have to look through, for example, after you identify the problems, which you were then converted into the goal and objective of your projects, all the activities and outputs you plan, you really need to be in line and consistent. So you could also demonstrate to the INTERREG Secretariat that you would have the possibility to fulfill these indicators that you also kind of list out in the application form. So these are really
basic kind of approaches that we kind of use for project development, but I think it's really somehow will be very useful. You kind of look
into and get familiarized with the logic behind this project development through this framework, logic framework. We all know that INTERREG 4C was already at that time to improve the public policies, but there were a lot of criticism on that, the actual impact on the policy itself. So for us, the writers who are actually now thinking about how to plan project per se, you really need to put a step back and think about how would you then see the proposals as an evaluator. And that is why the INTERREG Europe actually in this program period has installed this phase 2 in the application development or plan, so that while we do most of the projects, there is a linear development. You have objectives, you have the change you wish to make, you have the action plan, and in the end it's the outcome, and that's it. But I think what they are trying to do is that they add this phase 2 that kind of force all of us, of course not force, but kind of like get us to think about, in order to really make the impact, we also need to consider how we would implement the things we have learned from other regions. And I think that's what this phase 2 is coming from. And Verena has said that in the project there are phase 1 and 2. So most of the INTERREG Europe fundings would support you interregional learnings in phase 1, which is here. And then for the phase 2, they have supported very like a kind of pre-field activities, for example, 2 project meetings and 1 final conference. However, in phase 2, you need to really most of the time finance the activities of the implementations with your own fundings, and that is either structural fund or then your regional development fund or then national fund. And with this approach, they hope that they would really ensure the impact of the INTERREG Europe would then really spread out not only on this interregional learning level of couple partners meeting, but then the lessons learned would be really implemented in the regions by kind of, we plan this implementation also in the project, the phase. So it goes on the circle. Is it here? So if we think about the planning of the INTERREG Europe project, the overall goal is really to impact on the policy instrument. We would start with identify a project proposal, project problems, and when you are now actually already thinking about applying and preparing a project proposal, identify the issues, you are already in this loop, meaning you are here. So that you would really identify the issues that and problems is relevant for your region and also for all partners. And thinking about the project plan and also these activities in terms of interregional learning that defined in the application form. And then through all that, if you got financed, you would go through this first phase of project implementations to develop action plans, which is the bottom of it here. And then in the application, if you have made application, or you have to actually, sorry. so in fact, that in the first phase, you would, through interregional learning, develop an action plan, and you will implement in the phase 2. Then you will actually, in the second phase, do the monitoring of your action plans. And the last part is this reviewing and experience sharing. Then that goes to this policy learning platform, that then all the projects should be seen and consider that your activities would contribute this policy learning platform and break the. So that's pretty much, I would think, when we are planning project activities for the INTERREG Europe program. The process to prepare any proposals are more or less similar. They are universals. That there is first stage of you develop the concept, the problems, and then you try to really validate the ideas and then develop further with the concepts and commitment, and then working along the ways and make the action plan application. But of course, that for the first phase of ideations, it will be really important to, for example, identify the challenges that is shared not only by one or two partners. You, of course, need to really have committed partners who want to develop and work in the project with you. But it's also very important to really make sure that the partners are relevant and we are really committed to work with you. And the second one is that you need to really identify what's the policies relevant already in a very early phase, and also discuss with them, the policymakers, if, for example, you are not the owner of the policies you are managing, you are addressing. For example, in the IER, we have addressed European Regional Development Fund, and of course, when we prepare the projects, we do discuss with our colleagues in the office. And however, like when we are now in the last phase of negotiations, there are questions occurred from the Secretariat that we have to go back to them and really think about what's the impact and the changes or relevance of the organizations to address and impact policies. So this is really important to make sure that the managing authorities or decision-making body of the policies should be involved in the very early phase of your application, so you can also know what kind of impact you are going to write in the application form. And once you really have the concept, you have the ideation, sense-making with partners, try to think about what really the objective, which has to be sometimes compromised and negotiated between different important actors and partners in your consortium. And then it comes to, once you have the really concrete project ideas, then you have to go into the objectives, activities, work plan, and then think about the architectures of the work plan in this sense of interregional learning. What's the best way for your regions to learn from each other? And then most important is to characterize your consortium. Yes, most of them should be partner public bodies, but they are also, it's also important to really categorize the roles of each of the partners in the consortiums. For example, you may have the leaders of the issues. For example, some regions are very strong in implementing risk-free strategies, and some regions may be the follower regions in implementing their risk-free strategies. Something like that. And it has to be kind of stated and then make this appear in your application form, so that makes sense that you make this consortium. And after you have made this general planning, and you go, of course, into this, engage in the enlarging the project ideas, and then if you need partners, especially some competence you need to really, of course, also look for them in the earlier phase, and then start with the proposal ratings, and then maybe if you need support leaders later on and make your application. So there is also some a general horizontal principles that I would like to bring to you is that in each of relevant stage, you should really consider what is this project relevant to the program level in terms of impact policies, and then why is it relevant for the region? What's really the link of this policy I have addressed to my regional development or organizational development? Think about the partnership, complementary partnership means that the roles of the partners should be really complementary, that one supposed to the other. And then looking into the existing projects, even approve the projects, and then also the best practices that are already available. Don't do the things that others done before. And then this local interests and needs should be also very, always keep in mind, because that's what this program is looking for. need that is kind of initiated by the local actors. If we look into just about this interregional learning process, there is a lot of information actually is stated and shared in the program manual. Please look them through. But we could not think about the problems by regions, but we have to define the problems in the perspective of policy instrument. So if you think that you are planning a project approach per se, so first you have to line up all the policies you have addressed, and then in the project you will go through different stages. For example, identifying the local specification, common challenges, building consensus. The methodologies or the approaches could be like using baseline studies or working meetings. And then if you go from after this building consensus, you exchange best practices in the interregional learning settings through workshops, seminars, study visits, peer reviews. There are many ways that you can do. These are just some examples. After the exchange of best practice, you would try to incorporate the lessons learned. It's not very easy, in fact, because when you are talking about organization change, impact on the policy, it takes time. And then it means that you need to really think carefully how you develop this action plan. That is also possible to implement later on in the phase 2. And then after that is the implementation and monitoring. So in short, this is an overview of what interregional learning activity could be in your application. And we have talked about a lot about the partnership and consortium and what is relevant and what makes a very good and winning partnership. The first is, of course, it should be a natural of a public entity responsible for the addressed policy instrument. They should demonstrate they have the capacity to impact the policies, and then you need to make sure it's written there in the application form, because the secretary will come back to you later on if you are kind of approved under conditions. They will really ask you, please demonstrate your capacity to impact the policy. And that's what we have been now going through 11 structural fund programs at the moment before. And then the other very important is the involvement of local stakeholder group. And that is, of course, very, for me, is a very useful way to engage the local actors to be taking interest in the project, because I will be able to involve the stakeholders not only for the development for the local needs, but also I can also bring them to the interregional learning events and activities, seeing how things is done in other regions. And this one is, of course, very important to keep in mind when you plan and think about the consortium, that local stakeholders should be part of your planning in activities. The other is the complementary know-how and best practices. In application form, you need to demonstrate and also tell the secretariat and the monitoring committee that there are identified best practices we can really learn from other regions, and they should be shown in the application form as well. And also to identify, for example, when I was preparing the IER project, we had made a not SWOT analysis, but a needs and developed matching, so that really we have 10 regions, and the regions is able to say, I would like to learn, for example, this, the management of a structure fund from the partner region, from Denmark, for example. So we are able to already say that in the application form specifically what kind of competence and knowledge we wish to learn from this consortium. And the other is that don't underestimate the challenges of this change management, as well as learning policy learning process. For example, in the IER, we have 10 regions, regional authorities, who are, of course, all involved and quite knowledgeable with the policy making, but the skill of facilitating the knowledge transfer is its own state of art, and you please consider that carefully when you are planning the application and activities, because it will be good you have someone there guide you along the way in this implementation process. And then third point is this geographically balanced. I'm finishing. Okay, geographically balanced. That has been mentioned that you should probably include regions from all across Europe as well as developed and less developed regions. In terms of commitment, and then it's of course we have 3 projects, and 2 of them are more or less kind of initiated from an existing network, and it's on the one hand very good for us as the partner because we know the partners who we would like to work with, and we know they will do their job. On the other hand, then you also need to have like new ideas, new blood to the development work. And also, if you are kind of like building a project based on existing network, the secretary will ask a lot of what's the added value of it, and please demonstrate it. From those projects that have been prepared since the last couple of years, I noticed that quite often the good consortium is built based on like 60% of like the partners or the regions that you kind of have been worked with. You know they will do their job, but it's also very good to bring in and work with the partners you don't know. For example, I was running an INTERREG A program on the talent retention issues, and we had 2 partners from Estonia which I have not worked before, and I think they have, in fact, the partners has bring the new knowledge I was not aware of before the project live, and that has been proved to be really added value to the project implementation. So don't be afraid of taking new partners, but of course you need to be sure that you have at least a minimum amount of 36% of partners you know that they will work and do their job. This is an example from the IER consortium that we try to cover all the partners regions from Europe, and they are actually. Please check this clarification from the DG Regio. There is also about how developed you are. Is less? Are you transition regions? Try to cover your consortiums with these categories as much as you could. So. This is all the random thought that I have like to share with you some lessons learned. For example, first, to have a lead partner, it would be really good to, in fact, because this is a program addressing structural funds, to have a partner who is the managing authority of structural fund will make your life easier. First, because this is it's a lot of work with being a lead partner, and for them who knows the troubles and the issues and challenges to managing authority will make it the application preparation process much easier. The other is that even though more than 50% address policy should be structured from programs, is a knocked up criteria, but if most of your partners really have to get support there in order to pass this threshold, I think the INTERREG Europe is really enough for you. Because it will take a lot of time to plan and explain the impact. Let me just check. Now you're standing, I'm getting nervous. And then I think Werner was also said that the third one is that the policy instruments and the plan should be really based on the local development needs. So there's no way that there is one writer writes everything for all partners. It will not work in this current program period. You need to have partners who write the specific challenges that face in the region. And then please ask your partners to discuss and agree in advance with the policymakers of the addressed issues that you wish to tackle, because you need to anyway also write it in the application form. There are 3 ways of impact policies listed in the program manual. Read them through carefully. agree with the managing authorities what kind of impact you really see that you can bring to this policy you are addressing. When you are writing the application form, please have 2-3 extra eyes to read through before you submit it. I was writing it last summer, June, July. Nobody was in the office. It was summertime. and I think that sometimes when we're writing so much, you tend to get blind. And it'd be really good to have someone to look through and be consistent and logical. Because even we have some conditions that the Secretary was asking, why is there are some inconsistent between the numbers of the workshops organized in this and this and this. So be consistent, because what you have left will come back in the end if your project is approved and you have to go through. And then please read through the program manual carefully. And then if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact the Secretariat and also Anuga from the National Contact Point. I think they have been really useful and helpful in my preparation phase. There is also a very important thing, the last but not least, check your application and proposals against the INTERREG Europe selection criteria in the program manual page 5.3 before submissions, because there is a knockout, there is eligibility assessment, there is also the things that you're willing to fulfill in each of criteria. Check them through. If you think you have fulfilled them, I think you will be able to touch base. So thank you for your attention and good luck for those who are preparing the application. Thank you.